We're going to walk through how to determine your confidence in a prediction. Now, confidence in science is not a feeling like it is in many points in our life. Confidence in science is actually determined by considering a couple of factors and putting those factors together. So I'm going to walk you through what factors we're going to consider and then how we would come to a conclusion about what our confidence is that we're going to communicate. Now we're going to use this image that's on my screen right now, which is called a confidence matrix. And basically, this confidence matrix has two things you're going to consider. The first consideration is over here on the side, and it's where do the data points fall with respect to your trend line. So if your data points all fall on your trend line, then you would be at the top of this column. If all of your data points fall off of your trend line, or many of them fall off, you would be in the middle of this column. If your line doesn't seem to fit your data at all, you'd be at the bottom of this column, and perhaps you need to consider another factor or another relationship instead of the one that you're looking at. So we would, at this point in time, we would look at our graph. I'll give you an example graph here. So here's my graph. As you can see, most of my dots are on my trend line. So the best fit line is near the center of nearly all the data points. There is one there at the end that is not quite on the line, but we're going to say most of the dots are on our trend line, and we're going to stay at the top of this column. Okay, now the second consideration is over here at the top. And this actually has to do with what you're trying to predict. So if the value that you are trying to predict is in between the data points that you actually have, so on this graph, it would be between maybe 1 and 5. So let's say you're trying to predict 4. That would be in between your data points that already exist. Then you would be far left on this second consideration. If the value you're trying to predict is near your data points but not in the middle of them, then you're going to be here, kind of in the middle of this consideration. If the thing you're trying to predict is way the heck over here on the side, then the thing you're trying to predict is not very close to the data that you actually have. Your confidence would be fairly low. You're going to be far right on this column. So if we'll go back to our example. Our first consideration was here, and then our second consideration, you'll have to look at the graph and notice that the bottom goes from 0 to about 1.2. So let's say I wanted to predict something with a value of 10. I would be way off the graph. I'm not in this data that I already have. I'm not even close. I'd be way off this graph. So my value up here would be here. The value I am trying to predict is far from the data range. Okay, once I've determined these two considerations, it's a little bit like Battleship. You go down and you go over until you hit the same box, which in this case is this box. Those two values meet in the medium, so our confidence would be medium.